All right, so today what we're going to talk about is taking the pictures that we shot yesterday for our Annie Leibovitz photo shoot, and we're going to go ahead and bring those into Snapseed and do some editing to help them look a little bit more like her style. So let's go ahead and just jump straight inside of Snapseed. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here. So let's go ahead and open up Snapseed. And I was doing some editing yesterday, just kind of playing around with stuff. So let's go ahead and open up a fresh image. So I went through my camera roll and just added some stuff to favorites. So let's just start off with this first image here. And so you can see like it's pretty warm, right? It was the middle of, or like the last part of the day, and the light that was coming through there was that kind of golden hour. And even with the diffusion, it's warmed it up quite a bit. And with Annie Leibovitz, we want there to be kind of this muted color palette. So we're going to look at actually two ways to go about approaching it. So let's start off with the easiest way. So let's go Tools. And let's just start off with some image tuning. So typically with Annie Leibovitz's work, it's a little bit flatter. So what I'm going to do is just maybe come in here and maybe just start with contrast and just maybe, look at contrast and maybe bring down that contrast just a little bit so that it doesn't, just kind of just mutes it a little bit. And then the next thing we probably want to take a look at is let's look at saturation, because there's a lot of warmth and stuff in here. So let's just try bringing that saturation down a little bit. So again, we don't want to take it all the way down to black and white, but we might be able to just like mute it a little bit, just, bring it down so that the color isn't quite so strong. Right, where a lot of times we're like, yeah, we want more color. But in this case, we want to kind of minimize that color just a little bit so that it's just not quite so strong. And you can see already, like if we go like that, it's already brought it down quite a bit, and it's kind of, we don't want black and white this time, but we do want there to be a muted color. Next thing we could do is maybe let's look at warmth. So again, as we know, it's already pretty warm. So we might be able to go, if we go in the right direction, it's going warmer. So we might want to actually just cool it off a bit and maybe kind of give it, give it a little bit of that kind of bluish color. Now even though that we've gone ahead and we've made the contrast lower, I might still want to go into like shadows, and I can decide, do I want those shadows maybe just a little bit richer or a little bit darker, so they can add a little bit more fullness to the image. Okay. And I think that's looking pretty good, and again, that's where we started, that's where we're at now. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that's probably okay. And then once I've done the first one, I can still go in and do other things. And just to double check, I went ahead and sent myself two photos. These are kind of the two photos that I'm kind of looking at. So, this is that bluish one. So, we can see that it's kind of got that muted color, but there's still some brightness to his face, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just jump back inside of Snapseed. So what I might want to do is actually start to kind of pull these values a little bit. So I'm going to go in here and let's do some brushing. So I'm going to go with the brush, and I'm going to do two things. Let's go ahead and go to Dodge and Burn, and let's burn +5. So I'm just going to come in here and just kind of add a little bit extra brightness to the face. Yeah, we can maybe do the beard a little bit too. So we're just trying to brighten that part up. And again, if we make a mistake, we can always come in a little bit tighter. We can bring that down to erase and just kind of, take a little bit off of those edges here if we need to. And then when we're in that app, I think if we hold, it should just show us that difference there. We can go ahead and say check. So it just brightens that part up just a little bit. Other things we might want to do, we might want there to be, let's look at white balance and see if there's some other things we can do inside of the white balance sliders. So temperature, let's see if we go ahead and affect that a little bit more. I might want just a tiny bit of pink in the face, and then maybe we can go to tint and bring that down just a little bit. Even just a hair, kind of gives it that bluey green kind of feeling. You know that I love a good vignette, so I'm just going to add just a little bit of a vignette, not too much, but just enough to kind of hold down those edges just a little bit. And And then that inner brightness, I don't think I need to do very much because I think that I've already kind of brightened up the face. I'm going to bring that in a little bit tighter. So again, that's just, again, we can see a huge difference between those two pictures, right? So, there's lots of other little things you can play around with. You may want to look at the crop. So her crops are oftentimes a little bit tight to me, like this little bright spot down here and this little sleeve I think is unnecessary. So I'm just going to bring this down maybe just a little bit. Still want maybe that sleeve, maybe just get rid of that fold there and just come in a little bit tighter. I think that just, helps kind of pull in to the portrait a little bit more. So there's our first one. And again, when we go through our picture, don't forget we want to export it. I'm going to go ahead and save a copy so that I can make changes again later if I want to. And I'm also going to export it so that I have a JPEG image that I can share and put on my Weebly site. All right, so there's our first photo. So let's go ahead and open up the second photo. So we'll go back to our devices, we'll go into favorites, and then we'll take the second image. So here's the second image. And so we're gonna just try doing it in a slightly different way. So the picture that I'm gonna create this time is gonna be more of that yellowy green color. And so let's go ahead and, we talked in the very beginning about this thing called curves. And so we're gonna go back to that. So we're gonna try tools, and then we're gonna use the one that says curves. And so with curves, there's actually 5 different types of curves that it can create. And so we're just gonna start with the first one, which is for all of the channels. So it's kind of like a brightness control. And so there's a couple of things that we can do. Now, I'm gonna go ahead, if we move this top slider, it's gonna make it a little lighter, a little bit darker. So I'm gonna darken it down a little bit. Actually, the image that I'm going for is this image up here. And so it's got a little bit of a darker overall cast to it, and it's got some richer blacks and things than the other image. So I'm gonna go ahead and maybe actually increase the contrast just a little bit. And I can always come back and just brighten up the face a little bit. Now, once I've done that initial adjustment, then down here at the bottom, I'm gonna click on this one on the far left. Those are the different color channels. And so there's a RGB one, which is the one that we just did. And then there's each of the individual channels, the red, the green, and the blue. And then there's a luminance. So again, we learned a long time ago from James Clerk Maxwell that RGB is what makes up a color image. And so we're gonna try to affect 2 of them. So we're gonna start with green because we know we want kind of a green cast. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just add maybe a little bit of green to overall to the entire image. So just giving it a little hint of that kind of green cast, right? To where before, that was the warmth of the natural daylight, and now I've got a little bit more of a green to it. Now, the thing is, there's no yellow as an option, right? So I had green, that was easy. But yellow is actually the opposite of blue. So if I go to blue, I can actually start to bring these down a little bit, and that'll actually start to take a little bit of a yellow, hue to it. Now it is getting a little bit kind of dark, so what I might want to do is maybe come back in, and I could come into maybe like luminance, which means brightness, and I could come in and I could start to shift the brightness a little bit. I could start to pull these curves, down a little bit more if I want a little bit more contrast, and bring that up just a little bit. So I think that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and hit our check mark for that. So again, that's kind of where we started, and then we've given it, this kind of yellowy green hint to it. Then the next thing we're gonna do is let's go back into our tools, and it just seems like, like it's a little bit brighter, I think, in the background than I'd like this one to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and go into tools, and we're gonna go to brush, and I'm gonna use our dodge and burn tool, and I'm gonna go ahead and burn our background a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead and just start up in this top corner and just start painting. And now I'm going over, a little bit rough, so it's kind of because I'm zoomed out, it's a pretty big brush. So it's definitely going to be getting my face, but that's okay. I'm gonna come back in and clean that back up. So there's the overall darkness. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back to the erase one, and then I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. So I'm gonna start from the inside, and then that way I can see, am I getting anything here? Yeah. And so then I'm just gonna slowly kind of back it off, and paint away, you know, and start to come into the hair even, so that I can take away that part. But I don't want it to leak over into that area, because then I'm going to end up with a little like white halo. So again, just going to paint away. There we go. So now we've got it all the way up against those edges, but then didn't get any kind of leaking over. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. Now, it feels like the whole thing's a little bit strong, right? So we've got kind of that greenish yellow hue, but I think it's too strong. So let's go ahead back into Tools, and then we'll do a Tune Image. And I think in this case, let's go ahead and go with Saturation. And let's just bring that saturation down a little bit like we did before. So let's just kind of back off that color. So we still want it to have that yellowy green hue, but we don't need it to be so strong. I think that looks a lot better. There we go. And you know that I love a good vignette, so I'm gonna one more time give it a little bit of a vignette. And we're gonna start with the outer side, and I want it to be fairly dark, right? That picture that we were looking at, you know, it had some pretty rich blacks and it had some dark areas there, so I think that's gonna be okay to go a little bit darker. And I'll go ahead and brighten that up a little bit, so that'll help brighten up my face just a little bit so that it's a little bit brighter. So there we go. You know, and it looks to me like this part over here is just a little bit distracting to me. You know, the diffusion panel, it's still pretty small in the grand scheme of things, so there's a little bit of light hitting my leg there. So let's go ahead and do a crop, and then we'll just bring in this corner just a little bit. I think it'll be better to have one of the rolled sleeves and not the other. You know, we'll come in even a little bit tighter maybe. You know, typically we want the eyes to be around at that 1/3, you know, for a rule of thirds, so that's pretty close. I think we'll be okay there. So again, that just pulls in a little bit tighter and cleans it up just a little bit. This background part here to me is a little bit distracting, so let's go in and one more time with the brush, and let's just do an exposure, and let's bring down the exposure. Maybe it's 7th, and then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, and then let's just paint this down just a little bit. And then as it got darker, it also felt like it got a little more saturated. So let's go ahead and say okay to that. And then let's bring the saturation of just that one spot down as well. So we can do selective saturation as well. And so let's bring down saturation by 10, and let's just bring this down. There we go. Let's go maybe 5. So that way it just doesn't have quite so much contrast there, so that it doesn't pull our eye away. Then once we're happy with all of our edits, we're going to again go export. Let's do it 2 ways. Save a copy, and then we're going to also export and do just a regular old export. That way we've got our 2 ways of editing inside of Snapseed. So that's how we're going to do it. Thanks for the little head bump, Pancake. It's just right at the end. So that's our Annie Leibovitz edit. So get in there, pick 2 of your favorite images from the photo shoot, and try both of those techniques. Try one kind of in that bluish hue and one in the green, using the 2 techniques we just discussed. And that's it for our class before the holidays. So enjoy your time off, and I look forward to seeing you guys back in January.